All right, we are starting this live stream today. I'm going to go ahead and get a thumbs up from our facilitator Alfredo, my main man Alfredo. Are we good to move on? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Alfredo. You guys, thank you for letting me talk to you today. My name is Kevin. I am the head of data analytics at Credit Suite, which is an embellished title. I'm a team of one person, so don't feel like that's an awesome thing to be, but it is awesome for me. I love where I'm at with Credit Suite, and I have the privilege of speaking to you today about something that is pretty cool. It could make the world of difference for you as a business owner. And as the title says of this live stream, cash flow versus profit. What's the difference? We're going to dive into that. But before we do, I'd love to hear where you guys are from and what industry you guys are in. Maybe we can personalize this a little bit for the people listening. If you have access to the chat, feel free to drop in there what state you're coming in from and what industry you work in. I would love to get to know you better as well. So I'm going to drop that here. Awesome. Mike, thank you. So appreciate that. South, like Texas, south of what? Anyway, thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. In the next 20 minutes, we're going to dive into cash flow versus profit. I also want to touch on some underutilized financial reports, how you can understand and utilize your financial data more effectively as a business owner. We're going to outline the differences between cash flow and profit, like we need to, and dive into other helpful financial reports that you should care about as a business owner. And before that, I'm going to cover when you should start your financial data journey as a newish business owner. I think that's a common question that people ask, and they don't know, when should I start bookkeeping? When should I start producing financial reports? And you know what? Let's be honest, for a lot of business owners, in fact, I hope for most business owners, they're on top of this. They own a business for a reason and they're trying to succeed. And so they've dived into their financials already. But I'm going to make sure that we set a standard for that and move on into what are the most helpful ways to look at your data. I personally, I have a really special appreciation for this topic because I'm a data analyst with a background in accounting. I pivoted into data from accounting because I love the perspective that and the business conversations that come up there. And I've always had a special emphasis on the financials. Staying on top of your financials enables you as the owner to employ what I call agile decision making. And let's be honest, it'll turn you into a superhero. If you're on top of your finances, you know your data, you're going to be able to make decisions really quickly, and you're going to turn your company into what you've always wanted it to be. And before we get started, I know you're excited to hear some random dude talk about financial reports. Most business owners love talking about finances. But before we dive in, I want to mention that we have a challenge going on at Credit Suite, and it's coming up at the end of the month. It's called the Funding 50 Challenge. I think the URL or the QR code is already on your screen. Thank you, Alfredo, for that. And if you could drop a link as well in the chat. So what this challenge is for 3 days, for 3 hours a day, Credit Suite will be covering 50 alternative lenders or just sources of funding, some of whom we've actually got some of these lenders to present with us during this event and helping you learn how to get funded with them live. And one thing I want to mention with that too is I was Googling around and I found that according to Investopedia, half of all businesses fail within 5 years. That's a big, big number. And the number one reason for that is financing hurdles. They don't know how to get money in their business to lubricate the oil, to lubricate the machine that generates revenue. Most businesses need that at some point, and we don't want you to miss your chance because a lot of people don't know that there's a lot more sources of funding out there. So we're going to cover 50 in 3 days. Make sure that you sign up for information by following the link. Okay, enough of that. Let's dive into the fun stuff. I feel like uh, for most business owners, at least the business owners I've met, and correct me if I'm wrong, drop in the chat if if you're like this as the owner, or if you feel like this is different. I just feel like owners don't love spending time looking over accounting reports and financials. I know that some are, and some tend to be obsessive a little bit, but I feel like for the most part, entrepreneurs are very like get it done oriented. They're very the next task oriented. And for that reason, a lot of people can go a long time without paying attention to financials, or even just paying attention to financials from different angles. So we're going to talk about are those different angles. And one of my favorite quotes from John C. Maxwell, I think fits in here really well. He says, "One of the greatest secrets to success is doing what others won't do and doing it often." So do you analyze your financials more than once a quarter? Do you even have financial data available to you to analyze? Does it even your business bank account? It should come with some basic reporting. Do you look at that? If you answered no to these questions, um, I have great news for you. Actually, you might be just fine as a business. But then again, you might not be fine. Who knows? Because we're not looking at the data. The danger of not being aware of your company's finances is that every decision you make, every deal you close, could either have a positive effect or a negative effect on your business, and you wouldn't even know. We at Credit Suite, just like maybe every business out there, have made decisions that we thought were really good, and it resulted in dollars. We're like, yes, this is exciting. These dollars are awesome. We're thriving as a business. But then we looked at the financial data and we looked at expenses and compared them in periods of time and found out that wasn't a good decision. Let's go in a different direction. And being able to pivot those directions as a business owner is critical to succeeding. The and just let's see, where am I at? When should we start developing financial data? When should I start my books? Uh, let's just dive right in. The best time to do it is when you started your business. The second best time to do it is right now. I'm not saying that you should have hired a bookkeeper or a CPA when you didn't have the money to do that. I'm saying that at least at the beginning, you need to upkeep the books, and you need to have something at least on a monthly basis to look at and to reference back to. And you need to understand the data that it's telling you intimately. Most of you have had a business for either several years or longer than several months. And by now, you should have had a regular look at those financials on at least a monthly basis. And at the beginning, I know finances are tight. You don't want to hire a bookkeeper, and that's okay. You could have someone that you know do it. I know a lot of business owners that their spouse is the one that does that. Their kid is even someone that does that. They've contracted part-timers or even remote contractors to do it. There's tons of low-cost resources for you to accomplish organizing your financial data. The other quick thing to do right at the beginning, the inception of your business, is getting a business bank account, a localized place where all your transactions are happening. Don't do business with your personal bank account. There's a ton of reasons not to do it. A lot of which Credit Suite talks about in our main conversations that we have about business credit. But for our purposes, one of the several benefits of getting a business bank account early is that when you do decide that you want to get organized about your financials, it's going to be night and day difference. It's going to be so much easier uh, for you to organize that data and to start producing historical reports on that as well. Cash in, cash out by category is the most basic report that you're going to need. And I think I've looked into other business bank accounts. Most of them come with this type of reporting without you needing to upgrade to any extra services. And also I think QuickBooks is a pretty affordable. Even our business, we have, I think, between 50 and 100 employees, and we still operate on QuickBooks Online. I know that might make you cringe, but it actually is working really well for us, and we pay less than 50, less than $100 a month for it. Anyway, let's move on. In summary, when you start your business or right now, get a business bank account. Start doing your books. That's the foundation of getting value from your financial reports. Okay, what financial data is important to me? Assuming you have a business bank account and even the most basic reporting, it's not difficult to quickly look at your statements and know all that you need to know, especially at the beginning. You guys might be rolling your eyes at all this saying, I know all this, Kevin, I know all this. And that's awesome. But there's a lot of business owners uh, that don't have a intimate knowledge, a daily knowledge of how much cash is in your bank, how much is going out, how much is coming in. However, and as we all know, complication in your business sets in surprisingly fast. There comes a point in every growing business where the owner no longer has knowledge on all the pieces of the puzzle without extra tools. As the operation grows, so does headcount. You're going to hire employees. Departments spring up. Sales is usually the first one. Support comes after that. Product, marketing. It can quickly become impossible for the owners to know everything about the business. The details become diluted, and the assumptions that you know how much something costs, or you know how much you make on something on your sale, closing a deal, those assumptions become very risky, really dangerous if you don't have extra reporting coming your way on a regular basis. When you even have a hint that you don't have every piece of the puzzle in your mind at all times, this is when it's vital to bring on extra reports so that you can keep that detail on one page or on in a condensed version. Among all of the reports that you're going to need, because you're going to bring in operation data, sales data, all that, financial data, cash transactional data is the most important of them all. You might not be paying attention to that data all the time or even as often as other reports, but the finances are the most important because after all, you're a business. You got to keep your business going, and money is the only thing that can do that. So you should probably learn how to keep that money that's coming in. All right, so let's move on to the meat of what we want to talk about. Let's talk about the most underutilized financial reports. Let's talk about cash flow versus profit. So starting with cash flow, and I'm going to include your cash cycle in this. I'm going to try not to be too accounting-y. I'm going to try to be more practical for most business owners that I know that aren't from an accounting background. So for cash flow, this report basically is just all the cash in and all the cash out of your bank account in a certain period of time. Most people look at it on a monthly basis. And if you want to stretch it out, quarterly, yearly. And this includes three different categories: operating cash, investing cash, and financing cash. Most businesses don't have investing cash. And if they do, it's a pretty small amount. Unless that is their business, then at that point, it's actually operating cash. And then financing cash is not yours. You have to pay that back. So what we're going to focus on is operating cash, because that's why you're in business. You're here to sell a service and make money from doing it. So we're taking away investing and financing cash that is coming in the door. We're just isolating operating cash. From this report, you can figure out your margins, your trajectory. Am I making money? Is cash overall increasing or decreasing in my bank account? And that alone will allow you to make critical business decisions. Can I hire this person? Can I buy this vehicle? Can I afford this certain thing that will obviously make my business better? But if I buy it without having the funds to do so, then I'm kind of SOL. A good exercise here is okay, I think we already covered that. Sorry if I'm like kind of jumbling around a little bit. All right, cash flow and then cash cycle. How long? The question that cash cycle answers is how long does it take for when I sell something till when I get paid for that? And it can get tricky if you put terms on it like net 30 or payment plans, or if you finance your products. For example, on our main pricing page, you'll see the option to finance Credit Suite's main consulting products, and it will take a certain number of months back. The cash cycle extends. The longer your cash cycle is, the more risky that cash becomes. Cash now is way more valuable than cash 1 month from now. Not only because you can use the cash that's in your pocket now, but also because cash 1 month from now is may or may not actually happen. We found that the longer you extend the cash cycle, the less likely you're going to collect 100% of that cash. People sit on their decisions. People have a constant weighing of pro and cons, the value that your product gives, and every time they lose that payment, it's a pain point for them. So the advice here, which you probably already know, is look at your cash cycle. How long does it take, and how can I shorten that cash cycle? All right, moving on to the next report. Break even. A break-even analysis is what we're going to call it. The question that this answers is, how many sales do I need to make to start making money, to break even, and to actually become profitable? This is a very critical number that you should know. You should have this at the top of your mind at the end of every week, at the end of every month. Of course, the details make your life complicated, and I get that. I totally understand that. But you should also know, how many units did I sell in a month? Am I profitable? Maybe your sales cycle is longer than a month. How many did I close this quarter? And am I covering my expenses in that quarter? How do I get this number? Like, how do I get started with break even? That question is actually more complicated than you'd think to get the value out of this number that you need to. You cannot just look at the amount of your expenses in a period versus the amount that I made in that period. That's not what break even is about. Break even is about, how many units do I need to sell to become profitable? And that question is more complicated than you'd think. And here's why. When you look at your expenses, it breaks into two categories. You have operational expenses that are like your accounting department, even the executives department up to the time they're not spending directly selling. And then you have what is called variable costs. Variable costs are costs that go up and down according to how many units that you sold. These are expenses that go out the door every time you make a sale. These are commissions paid to your sales reps. This is shipping on costs you're sending out the door. These are costs that you pay each time you make a sale. You need to separate these two categories of expenses. You take your operational costs, let's say it's 100 grand, and then you take your variable costs and you say, let's say it's 20%. You lose 20% of the amount you collect every single time you make that sale. So if your product costs $100, you make $80 on that. So how many $80 do you need to close to cover your 100 grand of operations? You need to make a lot of sales. And so that number, that unit, we just talked about a little bit of how that's a little bit more complicated. When you break it down like that, it becomes a lot more simple, but a lot more valuable to you as a business owner, because a lot of people miss their trajectories. They incentivize sales reps. They come out with incentive plans for bonuses and all that based on a number that's actually hurting their business instead of helping it in the long run. All right. Diving into the last one, I promise this is the last one we're going to talk about. Gross margin analysis. This is another gross margin report. You can get this standard from QuickBooks Online. The question that this answers is, do you make money when you sell a product, or are you losing money when you sell a product? Going back to the example of Credit Suite's history, this was several years ago. There was a time when we were selling a product that was high dollar amount. We were so excited. Our revenue was never higher, and we were pumped. We were hiring people, but then we dived into the expenses that came along with that, and we found out that when every time we sold something, we were actually losing money. So even though our revenue was never higher, our expenses were growing at an even stronger rate. So look at gross margin in two different perspectives. The first one is, do I make money when I sell a product? Do I make so if you have physical goods, what are your variable costs, like we talked about before? And do those variable costs exceed the amount that you're selling your product for? Um, and then once you know your margin on a product basis, then you need to look at it on a time period basis in the company overall. Am I making money month after month? And how much am I making? How much am I losing? And what decisions do I need to make as a business owner to pivot toward the positive, toward profit? Or am I losing money? So how do I plug up expenses? How do I limit the dollars going out? And do I need to pivot? Do I need to make some pretty hard pivots? These are the moments as a business owner that are actually really, really hard. Because if you have employees that their very job is contributing negatively to the company, even though it's, they're able to feed their families, they have priorities of their own. Your operations is your purpose as a business. In order for you to survive and continue paying other people their salaries, sometimes you have to make some really, really hard decisions. We've gone through that in our history. And we empathize with that. We know what it's like to make those decisions. So to avoid those decisions, financial data, gross margin, break even, cash flow, knowing your profit, these things, starting these things from an early basis will all but guarantee that you are going to avoid those conversations. Obviously, no one's doing it perfect. You have big tech businesses nowadays that are having massive layoffs. It's not, you can't avoid it 100%. There's no actual guarantee, but you can. Can you hear me now, Alfredo? Is that good? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was muted. My 2-year-old is banging on the door right now, and my headset just died, which means that you're probably going to start hearing them. Uh, so just deal with it because you guys know what that's like. Um, I want to wrap up by saying the best chance that you have, not just for survival as a business, but also to avoid making really, really tough decisions that affect people's lives, is to keep track of your finances from an early stage, from the very beginning. Knowing your profit month after month will not just allow you to make quick pivots toward profitability, but it'll avoid making really tough decisions like we've talked about. And I hope that you guys got value out of this. Feel free to drop in the chat if you did or not. We're playing with this subject right now. And yeah, Alfredo, thank you. Free business financing assessment. Please take this quiz. Getting the financing that you need will also help you to be able to avoid those tough decisions and be able to lubricate the operations toward profitability. And for a lot of business owners, that's the only thing standing in the way. And we don't want that to become a barrier for you if it's not necessary, if all it is education. So please hit that URL right there. Thank you guys for joining. I'm going to give it a minute, but we're going to go ahead and end. Thank you.